Can we make our recommendation on a ratio and then let staff figure out whatever the correct industry standard is for calculating square footage? I don't know if it's BOMA or whatever, but let staff handle that technical side of it, but we agree to a ratio based on what we determine here. Is that?
I think that's very appropriate.
Would that work for you, Nancy?
That would be fine.
And then we don't have to bother with, let them figure that out. Where that
Okay. Any other comments? I think that this case has been going on since March. We are now here June 16th. July 16th. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my sheet, and for the first time for staff at this evening to get the use of the facility, I think is providing a real disservice to yourself as the applicant and to the community as a whole. Go ahead, Nancy.
I want to correct the record. This is not the first time we have talked about it, but we've gotten more detail tonight than we had received before. And I think that the applicant has made an effort to provide the information to us, but because they've not been, as he said, as they've not been in this situation before, I'm not sure that they always understood exactly what it was we were needing, and so I'm not sure that it came as quickly as we needed.
Well, regardless, it certainly added a new complexion to the whole discussion we're having tonight. Unfortunately, we can't consider it to the extent that it needs to be considered, I would think, in this application. With having said that, the chair would like to entertain a motion on this particular case.
I'd be happy to move that we accept the staff recommendations.
Do we have a second? This is going to die for lack of a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Ruffnow, second. Now, discussions on the motion.
What? I want to double check in terms of what is it the staff's recommendation is.
Staff is recommending approval of the existing building with the existing parking for the revised use, but not the additional square footage nor the reduction in parking spaces.
So this would preclude them from making this modification, converting the base, the underground parking to enclosed use.
It would not allow them to expand their square footage, but it would allow them to do any reorganization internally that they wish to do within the existing building to modify
right,
it.
but they could not convert, I guess, what your recommendation is that they cannot convert the basement or the parking to a enclosed basement.
That's correct.
So they end up having to retain all the parking that they have on the site at this point in time.
Right.
Now, I think that there might be, you might want to amend that motion, if I heard you right about a few minutes ago, to make that a ratio,
Right.
square foot ratio, parking ratio. Will you be okay with that?
Sure, and that was, it is based on 3 per 1,000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so why don't we just, would you be okay, Wayne?
That's fine with me, yes.
So instead of saying
For staff recommendation.
per staff recommendation, except with the exception of moving to a 3 per 1,000.
3 per 1,000, right.
And Mr. Ruffnow, is your second still okay on that?
Slightly less than that. You may want to modify that to make the number of parking spaces consistent with the existing parking and the square footage of the building with the existing building.
I actually think that's fine, because I don't know that we're going to make them, it's an existing condition. We're not going to make them add spaces that don't exist.
The chair is just trying to accommodate you.
No, but
All right, we have a motion.
Right.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Would somebody tell me again what the motion has been?
Patrice,
Adjusted,
make sure
modified, or?
No, it's not. Your motion is to accept staff recommendations.
That's correct.
Okay, but where did the ratio go?
We really, if we were to increase the number of parking, if we were to reduce the number of parking spaces that we were going to require them to have, instead of a firm number, I was saying, let's go to a ratio because we're still not sure what the square footage of the building is. But if we're saying what is there is sort of essentially grandfathered in, it is what it is, and we're sticking with that, it really, we don't need to go to a ratio because it's all there. It's not changing.
So we've left, you can forget the ratios, Roger.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Now I'm going to call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Ms. Mazur's in opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you completely close this out, if I could just add an item into the record for purposes of this meeting. The staff has used the provision in Article 28.1 in revising the parking from what Mr. Galloway referred to. And that section of the code says, in approving any zoning district change and/or use permit, the city shall impose conditions of approval as deemed necessary and appropriate to mitigate potentially adverse influences or otherwise promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. And it was on that basis that the staff did the revision to the parking.
Can I have a motion to include that in the record?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Rubenstein. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Borkin, those in favor?
Wait, one
Sorry.
question. Did you say section 28, Nancy?
It's 28. 28-.1.
Okay, I thought it was 18, but go ahead. Okay, that's fine.
All right. Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you.
RZ 09003, CV 09005,
Patrice, give it just a second. I think there may be a little motion here.